Start. Good evening and welcome to this virtual planning meeting held by virtue of the new regulation introduced by the government. I am Councillor Peter Dean and I will be chairing the meeting this evening. The regulations have temporarily removed the legal requirement for local authorities to hold public meetings in person. This will enable councils to make effective and transparent decisions on the delivery of services for residents. The requirement for public meetings to be made accessible to the public remains, and the link to the virtual meeting is available on the council's website in the usual live meeting link page. If a connection to members is lost during this meeting, I will stop the meeting to enable the connection to be restored. If the connection cannot be restored within a reasonable time, the meeting will proceed, but the member who's been disconnected will not be able to vote on the matter under discussion as they have not heard all the facts. Should any aspect of the external link fail, I may call a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes or so to determine whether the connection can quickly be re-established either by video technology or telephone in the alternative. If the connection is not restored within the time, the meeting will be adjourned and any further business will not proceed until another time and date. Any public questions probably submitted to the meeting during the period will be read out by myself and answered at the meeting. First, can I ask the clerk to ask members to confirm their attendance?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Akhtar?
Present.
Councillor Davis?
Present.
Councillor Harkness? Councillor Harkness? Councillor Hewitt?
Yes, sorry. Councillor Harkness present. My little stick thing isn't working.
Councillor Hewitt? Councillor Hudson? Councillor Hudson? I'm sure I've seen Councillor Hudson.
He's in the call, he must be on mute.
Right. Councillor Ibrahim?
Present.
Councillor Iqbal? Councillor Iqbal? Councillor Jakes?
Present.
Councillor Malik? Councillor Malik? Councillor Fithian?
Present.
Councillor Price? Councillor Price? Councillor Serjan?
Present.
Councillor Dean?
Present. Thank you.
Sorry, you haven't called my name, Sian.
Sorry.
Councillor Gloucester.
Did I miss you? I'm very sorry. Councillor Gloucester.
Thank you.
Sean, Councillor Iqbal's joined as well. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay. When the committee comes to a vote on any item, each member will be individually asked to state whether they are for, against, or abstaining. We also have officers in attendance from the Planning and Legal Constitutional Services. If we can now turn to the agenda, and for the benefit of those members of the public watching, the full agenda pack is available on the council website. The pack also includes the slides that will be presented tonight. And if I can then move to item 1, and it's apologies for absence. I've got Councillor Gary. I don't know whether we've got any further apologies.
Just from Councillor Gary, Chair.
Thank you. Item 2 is urgent business. I've been notified of one item of urgent business, which is Simon Robury is going to outline to members a new system very briefly, what's going to come in planning. Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies again that my camera doesn't seem to be working this evening. I just wish to make committee members aware that on Monday next week, the 21st, we will be implementing a new internal system within the Planning and Building Control Service called Uniform. This is a project which is integral to enhancing service delivery. The new uniform software will deliver a series of benefits, including improved IT security and data protection compliance. It will also drive service improvement, including reducing our reliance on a paper-based system, therefore giving us a cost benefit. It will enable enhanced spatial and GIS, geographical information system functionality, and online payments will become more efficient, and this will accrue a use of officer time benefit. We'll also be able to manage the system better internally, and a number of super users, as we call them, have been trained up, which reduces our reliance on external consultants, which again gives us a cost efficiency. This is an internal system used for the processing of planning and building control applications only. The migration should have no impact on residents or service user experience, and the planning portal will continue to function unchanged. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Would you be able to put a note round to members, Simon?
Yes, thank you. I'll do that with to all members of the council. I think may be appropriate, Chair. Is that?
Yes, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
Has anybody got any questions on Simon's brief report?
Yes, please, Councillor Gloucester.
Yes, Councillor Costa.
Is it a system that we will be using as well, or is it just an internal system for officers?
No, it's an internal system for officers, although it will be sitting behind the search engine. I don't know whether Graham wants to add anything, Chair, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
Yeah, probably not a lot really to add. I think from members' point of view, they probably won't notice much different from what's happening so far. The problem we have with the current system is that part of its age and part of it not being supported by the supplier anymore, which has caused some delays. It's caused particular problems. In fact, before we go on to the first item, a good example of that was the administrative error that related to that particular item in terms of the letters that were sent out. And part of that was down to the system not being set up correctly to change the relevant dates on those. So hopefully once we get the uniform system in place, problems like that won't occur. And we have, as Simon's just explained, we will have officers who will be trained up to be able to adapt that system as required and to put forward any improvements as we move forward.
Right, thank you. No further questions, and you will get a note round to find out a little more about it anyway. Okay, if I could then move on to item 3, and that's declarations of interest for any members. I'll take that we don't have any. I've been given no public questions, so we have no public questions. Item 5, the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of August. I will move them as a correct record. Is that seconded?
I'll second that. That's Councillor Akhtar.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions or observations on them or any corrections? Okay, I'll take that they're a correct record, unless, would you like to do a roll call, Sean, to make sure that we're right?
I'll do it as quickly as I can, Chair.
Yeah.
Councillor Akhtar.
Approved.
Councillor Davis.
Approve.
Councillor Gloucester.
Approve.
Councillor Hartness.
Approve.
Councillor Hudson. Councillor Hudson, you may be on mute. Councillor Hudson, I think you're on mute. Do you want to just nod your head? Thank you. Councillor Ibrahim.
Approve.
Councillor Iqbal.
Approved.
Councillor Jakes.
Approve.
Councillor Fithian.
Approved.
Councillor Serjan. Approved. And Councillor Dean.
Approved.
Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. If we move on to item 6, which is the first application, and this is for the Green, which was a deferral from the meeting in July. Members may recollect they raised a number of issues, and also there was some question about proper notification for people to make representations at the meeting. Members will see that this is a substantially amended application, and I think the developer has taken into account all the comments that was made at the July meeting. If I could ask the planning officer to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just see if I can share the presentation. Right. Are you seeing anything on the screen?
No.
No. Are you seeing something now?
Yes, we're in now.
Good. Thank you. So this is, as you say, Chair, there's an application committee considered back in July, but it is now substantially different. And the manner in which it's substantially different is that the original scheme included a retail unit on the ground floor. That's now been deleted. As a result, the residential accommodation, which was originally proposed on the upper floors, has been added to the ground floor, and that's resulted in an increase from 14 apartments to 21. And as you see, that's a mix of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments. So this is a location plan, and that's the site itself. As you can see, it's a cleared site, a former public house site, but obviously within a primarily residential area, but with some retail premises just to the west of the site. So just a few views showing the street scene. And examples of properties nearby, which obviously includes a similar 3-storey block in the immediate vicinity. And this is the proposal for the site. So this is the building location down at the bottom end of the screen. And behind that, you have a private car parking court, which will be provided for the residents of the development. There will be fencing erected around the site to provide security. These are the views of the site. The one in the bottom right-hand corner, which looks a little bit prison-like. The reason for that is that that's where it faces towards the houses on Keswick Drive to the east of the site, and obviously the windows there have been reduced in order to protect the privacy of those neighbours. Give you a better impression. Clearly, it's a modernistic style building. The flat roof isn't something which is commonplace in that particular location, although in fact much of the previous public house had a flat roof element to it, albeit much lower. But again, it retains a very sort of symmetrical approach to it, ornate architectural details on there. And in its context, both its scale and the type of building is considered to be acceptable on the site. The application's been considered obviously by the highway engineer. No objections have been raised on that basis. In terms of the relationship with neighbouring houses, similarly, all required separation distances are either met or exceeded across the site. So you can see the nearest properties physically to the north there and around to the east of the site. But again, windows have been avoided in this location, and the scale fits in with the more general character of the immediate area. So as I say, it's an amended scheme fairly comprehensively. It's recommended for approval subject to the conditions in the report and to a Section 106 agreement, which will require a financial contribution towards off-site public open space, and also the applicant will be required to provide a necessary contribution based on the development sales value for affordable housing provision. On that basis, obviously, I'd be happy to answer any questions of members. The application recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much indeed. Has anybody got any questions regarding the presentation and the plans before us? Councillor Ibrahim. Sorry, Councillor Serjan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I just had a quick question. I think it was going back to the previous meeting that we had. Can you just clarify the colour and of the brickwork? I'm just conscious that the modelling showed grey. The last thing we want is for a grey building in the middle of a beautiful, colourful area. So if you could just confirm that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair. Yes, the brick is essentially brickwork faces on the building, which obviously will be of a similar shade to surrounding buildings. I think you saw, well, you can see on where you can't still now see it. There are a variety of brick colours in the local area, render finishes as well, and it will be of a similar style to that. So no, it's the pictures showing the grey, black and white building. No, not a reflection of what the building will ultimately look like.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gloucester.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking for any objections because there was a 247 name petition to the previous application. Is there which page? Are there any objections to it? Is what I'm looking for at the moment.
Again, through you, Chair. Yeah, I think you'll see that there is an update above the representations section. So we re-advertised, once the amended scheme had come through, we re-advertised on that basis. And you'll see under the representation, we've had one additional comment received, but a fairly positive comment that indicates that many of the issues that had previously been raised have been addressed as part of the application. So clearly the concerns that related last time to a large extent, not entirely, but to a large extent, were in relation to the retail unit. And I think the deletion of that element from the scheme has removed much of those concerns. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Harkness.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a very quick one. I think last time we had assurances over the minimum space for the one-bedroom properties, what have you. Just checking that is still the case, that they're all of a reasonable size, because I couldn't quite see on any dimensions or anything.
Again, to you, Chair, yes, they are. It is confirmed in the report that all the new apartment units will meet the national space standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Has anybody got any further questions? If not, it's open for debate, the application. If anybody got any comments? If not, I'm happy to move approval.
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you. Is there any further comments from approving it? No. Sorry. Councillor Akhtar, did you say?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, in terms of the proposal that's in front of us, obviously the last meeting that we had, and there was many concerns that, like it has been outlined already, and I'm glad that the actual applicant took those on board and made the necessary changes. So therefore, I'll be supporting the application.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The same again as Councillor Akhtar. This is what planning's all about. This is why we have the planning committee. Everybody comes up with suggestions. They've come back together with the planning department and they've come with this proposal. You know, this is the way it should work, and I'll be happy to support this when it comes to the vote.
Thank you. Has anybody else got any contributions? If not, we could move to the vote, please.
Councillor Akhtar,
For.
Councillor Davis,
For.
Councillor Gloucester,
For.
Councillor Harkness,
For.
Councillor Hudson. Councillor Hudson, if you wiggle the mouse, you will get a little bar in the middle of the screen. If you click on the second symbol from the left, you should bring your microphone up.
He's got his hand up now.
Councillor Hudson, you need to unmute so that we can hear you. You're not on camera, so we can't see what you're doing. We can't see which way you're voting.
Can he not press the red button on his microphone? That might be a little bit easier.
Or type in the chat.
Sorry, do you want me to proceed with the vote, Chair, and we can try and get Councillor Hudson?
I think in this particular instance we can proceed with the vote because if Mr. Evans can actually make a comment, but I think it's only members that took part in the previous presentation in July that can actually vote on this. Am I right there?
Well, no, Chair, because it's actually a different application, isn't it? Because they've changed it in some way. So you're really considering it afresh.
Okay.
Ask him to do a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
He won't be on the camera unless he speaks because the camera won't pick him up.
Can you give a thumbs up, John? If you approve, yeah.
Unless he actually speaks.
Yes, I've got him on the I've got him on the screen, and he's give a thumbs up.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. Carry on. Councillor Ibrahim.
For.
Councillor Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Japes.
For.
Councillor Fithian.
For.
Councillor Surjan.
For.
And Councillor Dean.
For.
So that's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. If we can now go on to item 7, and I'm also taking item 8 with it, because the two applications relate to the same property at Tunstead, Greenfield. The first application is for planning consent for a 2-storey rear extension, and the second is for listed building consent for the same extension. I understand the presentation will include both elements. So could I ask the planning officer to do the presentation, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yet again, I will have a go at my favourite bit of this, which is getting the presentation up. Hopefully succeeded this time. Can everybody see a presentation?
Yes. Yes,
right. Thank you. Right. So as the chair has introduced, this application relates to a Grade 2 listed building, and it's a proposal both for planning permission and for listed building consent. It's before members, as you'll see in the report, because the applicant is related to a member of the council. As we move through, this is the site. In an area on Tunstall Lane, so it's quite an elevated area of properties, fairly sparse development, and there are a group within that area within an otherwise fairly open landscape. This is the building, and then obviously at the rear of the building, this is where the extension will be proposed. So it's this property which is in the centre of the picture, obviously an adjoining equal listed building on that side. To give you an indication where on the building the proposed 2-storey extension is proposed to be installed. This is just giving you an existing plan. So down at the bottom you will see that's that existing 1-storey element that you will see on there. That's going to be replaced, and this will be a new 2-storey element which will be attached to this section with a bedroom on the first floor. And these are the elevational drawings which actually indicate the structure. So as you can see, it's the area obviously coloured in. If you look at the bottom left-hand corner, this is the extension. So effectively includes a continuation of the roof as it comes down. There's a slight variance in gradient there, but not significant. And you'll see that the new fenestration is being proposed in there. There are some existing window openings on the building, but not ones which, for instance, if we go back, you can see, for instance, on the neighbouring property of the more traditional style on there. These are other window openings which don't appear to be original in style. Ultimately, so this is the proposal. To say it's round the back of the site. The Listed Building and Conservation Areas Act requires that special regard is given to the preservation of listed buildings and to their setting, and the assessment that needs to be undertaken is to whether the extension would fall within that particular category of acceptable development. There are various ways you judge that, whether it is more than substantial harm, less than substantial harm, or a neutral impact. In this particular instance, officers have concluded that it will be less than substantial harm. In such circumstances, it is necessary to weigh up that harm alongside any public benefits which are associated with the development. In this particular instance, although there are clear benefits to the household and to the applicant in providing additional accommodation, there are no identified public benefits. So the application needs to be assessed as to whether it is deemed acceptable in its own merits. This obviously is there are attempts there to replicate the design of existing features, existing traditional features. However, there are a couple of things that to some extent the officers consider that jar with the character of the original building. One is the scale of the extension, and this has come about as a result obviously of the roof line continuing down, and it gives it quite a squat appearance on the site. So obviously had that come down, been a single story, for instance, that may well have fitted in better with the overall character of the building. But there are concerns that the scale of it does detract from the character of the building. Secondly, and linked in with that, some of the fenestration that, although some of it has been designed in a traditional style, the lack of symmetry of particularly the window which is on the corner at the first floor level, and the styling of that window is not a traditional feature. There is no justification for that in terms of the preserving and enhancing the heritage value of the property. Similarly, the introduction of the large doors, the patio doors, French doors down at the ground floor level, although the applicant has pointed out that the ground levels, which you will have seen on the photographs, do preclude long distance views from that. The assessment has to be in the context of the building itself in its totality. So whilst that minimises the impact, it doesn't remove it, and we have some concerns that remain that the features that are being proposed on the extension are not appropriate on the building. In terms of the planning application side of things, there are other considerations you need to take into account. One is the fact that the premises are in the green belt and whether this would be deemed to be appropriate development. In terms of MPPF, it would be inappropriate if it was deemed to be disproportionate to the size of the original dwelling. I think, as you'll see, its scale is definitely subordinate to the main building and to the neighbouring adjoining building as well. In that context, it's considered that it would be in compliance with Greenbelt policy. In terms of impact on neighbouring amenity or highway issues, there are no fundamental implications given the location of the extension. But in terms of both listed building consent and planning application elements, as I say, the concerns remain regarding the design and the impact on the amenity, the historic amenity of the building itself. And you'll see the application is recommended for refusal on those grounds. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We've got two people indicated they want to ask a question. Councillor Hudson. John, we've still got you on mute. Can't you actually press the... I'm sorry, we just can't hear you, Councillor Hudson. I'm sorry about this, Councillor Hudson. Could we go on to Councillor Harkness?
Yeah, could I just ask what those windows are now going to be made of? I was just checking. It looked like they were UPVC on there, but I just wanted to just double check on that.
Through you, Chair, no, they are intending that the windows are of a more traditional style. So no, they're not proposing UPVC. I can see, obviously, particularly some of the window frames there do give that modern appearance to them. Thank you, Chair.
Has anybody else got any questions of the planning officer? Councillor Surgeon.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. Will the extension not be covered by the grassy patch? Can you just confirm that, or will it stick out in terms of when public, if public were to look at it? Is it something that will be kind of discreet, or is it something that will be obvious that there's been an extension there?
Yeah, again, it was an issue that's raised, and the applicant has raised the issue about the surrounding land levels of the site. And obviously, this is on the rear of the building, first of all. So it does diminish long distance views of the site, diminishes even short distance views because it is set down below the ground level. However, the extension itself, obviously, is a two-storey structure, so that will extend above the ground level, and that will be clearly visible. But I would also reiterate the point that was made that its impact on the listed building, really. So the fact that it can't be seen from a wide variety of vantage points is a benefit, but it's not overriding. You could still view the building at close quarters, and you will get your assessment as to whether the extension is appropriate and in more of a traditional form. But yeah, your initial point, Councillor, there are ground levels there that certainly disguise views of the lower level of the extension. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Akhtar.
Thank you, Chair. Graham, can we go back to the picture which showed the adjacent property at, elevation to it as well? Or can you not? Just my question is basically around the actual, the extension, the proposed extension, the actual design of it. Is it going to be similar to what's similar to the adjacent property? I know it's not as wide as that, but similar kind of materials, similar kind of windows are being proposed. Is that right?
I'm assuming you can't actually see the presentation back up.
I can see it now, yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. So obviously you can see the neighbouring property. It's actually owned by a family member as well. So you can see some of them. That has a more in terms of the window openings. You see the more traditional styles that exist on there. The applicant's property, obviously, there have been some amendments to this over the years. There's a little bit more of a mishmash. It is accepted by your officers that it is not perfect as it stands at the moment, and there can be benefits of alterations to that. However, that can be achieved without an extension which in its totality is deemed to be unacceptable.
Just one more question. In terms of the actual roof elevation that you referred to, is it similar to the adjacent property, or is that going to be slightly different?
Right, and if you can see now where the extension is.
So just on the diagram, it doesn't look as though. Well, I can't really tell, to be honest with you.
Moved up because we can't see it through our bars across the screen, Graham.
Oh right.
It's really difficult to actually see what you're talking about because we can't see the the actual completed picture, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, there's
Is
not
there any way
really.
of getting rid of our bars across the screen so that we can see it, or if you can?
Yeah, if you Hazel, if you click on the image, it'll get rid of the box. Yeah,
It's just gone. It's all right. That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so you'd see the roof line as it comes down. So in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see there's a slight variance in the gradient of that roof, but it's not a significant amount. But obviously what you can see there is the way the corner window, and again, this is a matter obviously of judgment and an impression, but that appears to jar. It doesn't seem to fit well within the corner. And similarly, if you go to the bottom left-hand corner, this window array, if you like, of those two windows seems to jar. It doesn't fit right, which is your officer's opinion on that. Clearly, that's for members of the committee to make your own judgments on.
Can those windows be redesigned, or within that elevation, or is that impossible?
That would be a matter for the applicant. I understand that obviously there's going to be representations by on behalf of the applicant. Right, okay. Perhaps that might be something that can be addressed. We have suggested to the applicant some amendments to it, but there are some fundamental concerns simply about the scale of the building as well. So the windows are one element of it. And again, this is a matter of judgment. If the windows themselves were altered to a more traditional style, whether that would make this scheme acceptable, I think on balance that we would still conclude that's not the case. But clearly, again, that is a matter for members to draw your own conclusions on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Has anybody else got any questions before we move on to Councillor Davis?
Thanks, Chair. Graham, you're recommending this for refusal, but would there be any planning application of any that you would approve at all if they come up with something a bit different?
Do you, Chair? I mean, obviously that would have to be yes. I mean, I think the simple answer is that this isn't a moratorium that says you cannot build an extension on that property. I think it is appreciated there are difficulties. The levels make some difficulties in themselves. If a single-storey extension was installed on there, it is likely that could be designed in a way that we would deem to be acceptable. The difficulty here is fitting the two-storey around the way the levels within the site are falling away and where the roof line falls. As a result of that, you've got these two levels on the fenestration, on the window openings on there, and it doesn't feel right. It feels, smallest house in Wales type scenario relative to the main building, and that is the concern. So it's difficult to get something very similar. If you just slightly altered the windows to make them better, I don't think that would overcome the more fundamental concern.
Okay, I've had no indications of further questions. If we could possibly go on to the applicant, Mr. Sheldon, who is, are you with us, Mr. Sheldon?
Chair, Mr. Sheldon has sent me an email to say that in view of Councillor Curley speaking, Mr. Sheldon doesn't wish to speak to you. So Councillor Curley will speak to you on his stead.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Okay, right, Councillor Curley, we're with you now. If you want to speak, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. Having taken on in regard the report from the officers, and that was a very good report, Graham. Thank you. Really, I want to speak on behalf of the applicant because while it's very tricky, it's always going to be tricky with a house of this age and this style. The issue is that there are sometimes around there, and Tunstead is just up from my house, there are various other styles up there, and some people have done some things that really don't match. But I think what the applicant is trying to do here is trying to do their very, very best to put something that is in keeping with the houses around it, as well as the adjacent properties. I mean, for instance, the extension will be in keeping because they are sourcing reclaimed stone, and some of it may actually come from the old Greenfield Primary School. So it would match not only the existing building, but the existings on either side. The precedent is actually set because there are large two-storey extensions on the adjoining property and at Lower Tunstead, and the committee has recently approved similar ones, particularly Running Hill Cottage is one. And I think it's an improvement because if you look at the rear of the property now, and it is something of a mishmash, and you know, Graham is very right to point out that the existing windows, heaven knows when they were put in and why, but it does actually improve the building. The building as it stands is being used as a family house, and at the moment there are quite a lot of difficulties with the rear facing of the house there. It's quite damp. It doesn't lend itself to being a proper family home, and there will be issues coming up in the not too distant future with that elevation of the house. Putting the extension on means that you're actually creating a proper family home there, but you're also preserving that side of the house. Now, I understand the concerns that you have regards the windows, but you're improving that UPVC window stuff there, and they're actually taking out a concrete lintel and putting in a stone lintel above timber doors. So the rear facing will actually be improved by that. And I understand also the applicant has tried several times to speak to officers to discuss the windows and discuss what may be done with the windows, but the applicant does inform me that he hasn't had any reply from the department. If that isn't the case and they have tried to contact the applicant, then I apologise, but the applicant does tell me that he has tried several times to discuss that and hasn't had any joy. So what he's trying to do really is enhance and improve that property. There are one or two precedents, and I don't consider really, knowing the area that as I do and knowing the properties around it, I really don't feel, and I'm just giving my impression as a resident living not far from there, I don't feel that the addition of this will be out of context and out of context with the other houses around. I don't think it would increase the massing of the house beyond anything that's acceptable. And with the garden being as it is at the back, it doesn't create anything that is unacceptable to anybody around. And I accept that we have to be very careful with these kinds of houses. And, you know, the planning officers are very correct in being very careful in what they do. And I do commend them for being diligent in what they do. But I think in this case, I'm speaking as a resident and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant. I think this is quite acceptable. I think it's acceptable in the area, and I think it will be acceptable to residents around, to the neighbours and to the general area. I don't think it's overdevelopment within the green belt, and I would ask that the committee look at it in those lights and look at it as it's providing a quality family home which will be enhanced and will be a new chapter in a listed building. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Curley. I've got a question from Councillor Harkness and then Councillor Akhtar.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Jamie. The added information you gave us there, I think, was very useful, particularly about the reclaimed stone, local reclaimed stone, which is obviously always a big plus. Now, obviously, usually the applications go to the parish council for comment, and there doesn't seem to be a comment from the parish council in this report. Do you know whether it's been to the parish council and if they've got a view on this?
It has, and it was approved.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Akhtar.
Thank you for that, Councillor Curley. It just, you know, in terms of the actual roof elevations that have been mentioned, can that roof elevation be changed or to sort of so that it's in similar to the adjacent property?
I presume it can. That would be up to the applicant. But if that is something that would be, I mean, I understand what Graham has said there, and if that's something that would need to be changed, I'm quite sure the applicant will be able to look at that. Yes.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Is there any further questions of Councillor Curley?
Yes, please, Chair. Councillor
Councillor
Gloucester.
Gloucester?
Yeah, you say that a precedent has been set up there. Could you just explain that to me, please?
Yeah, these adjacent property has a two-storey extension, which is of a similar type. These houses have been extended quite often, but there is one adjacent to this house. I understand that you have to be very careful and that people don't just throw things on the sides of houses and you end up with something that looks a bit like somebody's just had a go with some Lego. But there are other ones around which are in keeping, but quite obviously are extensions and not part of the original buildings.
So do you mean on the picture that we've got in front of us of sort of the stone cottages, do you mean the property next door to it has a two-storey extension?
Yes, I believe it has around the other side.
Ah, right. And when was that approved? Do you know?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Right. Could we try Councillor Hudson again? I'm sorry, John, you're still on mute, can't you? Very, very difficult, this. Well, Councillor Hudson's trying again. Could we, Councillor Akhtar wants to come back.
Oh, thank you, Chair. It was just another question in terms of, the window on the side elevation. Is there any precedence of similar properties in the area? Because that looks a bit out of character for me personally.
I have to be honest and say I don't recall anything that looks like that on the side.
Right.
Sorry, just one more question, Chair.
Councillor Gloucester.
Yeah, on the side of that property, there looks to be another extension, but it actually looks on the picture like it's a block that's been rendered or something. What is that extension on the side, or is it a shed? I can't. Are my eyes,
I think it's an outbuilding, Councillor Gloucester.
Right, so it's not actually part of the property then, is it?
No, I don't think so.
All right, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I've got no further indications of questions for Councillor Curley. So thanks very much indeed. Councillor Hudson. Councillor Hudson, do you want to? Sorry, Councillor Hudson, we just can't. You're still on mute, Councillor Hudson. Your microphone's still on mute.
Chair, maybe he can type in his question if he can't access his microphone.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know whether you can type in your question, Councillor Hudson. Your microphone's still on mute on the system and we just can't hear you, unfortunately.
He's managed to get his hand up though, hasn't he? So he must be able to.
He obviously can hear the discussion, but he.
Councillor Hudson, if on the toolbar that you use to put your hand up, you go to the second symbol from the left, that's your microphone. If you click on that, that should activate your microphone for you.
I'm sorry, Councillor Hudson. We just can't hear you unless you unmute from on the bar on your screen. There. Oh, it was for a second. Nearly. Have another go, John. I'm sorry, you're still on mute. I'm sorry about this. I think we're going to have to move the discussion on. What we're going to do now is go into a general debate on the application or applications. So I don't know whether anybody wants to start and contribute. Councillor Actor.
Thank you, Chair. Graham, in terms of the actual application, obviously we're minded to judge it in terms of what's been put in front of us. But can we put conditions in terms of, for example, on the roof elevation and the gable wall window?
Through you, Chair, I think given that we are dealing with the listed building, I think the answer to that has to be no. We need to make sure that the plans that are determined are the ones which show the development as proposed. I can see exactly what you're suggesting, and that could be a benefit to us. If the applicant was, if for instance members wish to defer a decision for that to be raised, hopefully we could get an agreement on something before the next meeting and bring it back to you. But I think because we're dealing with a listed building, it's very difficult to impose a condition that requires something that's going to be different from the scheme that's actually in front of you.
Councillor Surgeon, have you want to?
Thank you, Chair. I had a slightly different suggestion. I would suggest perhaps the applicant goes back and perhaps puts in an application for a single story rather than a double story extension. I think that'll be more in line in terms of the property of the resident, and I don't think it'll look too out of place. So that's my suggestion. I'm open for discussion if people want it. Thank you.
Has anybody else got any comments they'd like to make?
Yes, please, Chair. It's only Councillor Gloucester again. I just think we're in that situation yet again where people are living in a relic which just isn't suitable to modern day life. And I do feel, and I'm actually going to propose that we defer this again and see if through discussion the planning officers can come to some preferential arrangement with the plans and the applicants. So that's my proposal, if possible, please.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
I'll second that, Chair.
Through your Chair, through your Chair, sorry, is it possible? I just really think there's a need to clarify what members' thinking on this is, because there's no point us going away discussing with the applicant. No. And
could I intercede? Yes, could I intercede in that? It's been moved and seconded deferral. Now, could I suggest to the people that are deferring it that the reason for deferral is to see if a more satisfactory window arrangement can actually be made within the development, the proposals, and possibly see if any solution could be applied to the roof?
Yes. Yes, Chair.
And that window that you don't like as well.
Yeah, that's what I said, the window arrangement.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, could I just clarify then that in general, the scale is acceptable from what this proposal for the, but we want to look at those particular elements. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you know, what I'm saying is we defer it, and it's quite obvious that there's been two issues raised. And those are the two issues structurally, but also Mr. Sheldon's raised the issue, certainly in writing previously, that he wanted to actually discuss a rearrangement of the windows and wasn't given the opportunity to do it. So I just think a deferral might hopefully come forward with a scheme that if members wish to do, could judge it on the change of windows and possibly the roof line. Councillor Davis, did you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not too sure about this. We've got a listed building here in Greenbelt land. You know, I don't think we can approve. Basically, if we're going for deferment to change it, we're approving the two-storey bit on the back of the building. and subject the deferment subject to changes. I'm not so sure about that. I mean, wouldn't they have put that applicant? Shouldn't they have done that in the first place? I don't know what kind of discussions were had with the planning people, but I'm not so sure about this. I mean, what are the planning? You know, Graham, I don't know if you can comment on that.
Well, could I bring Councillor Jakes in, who's been waiting a little while, and then I'll bring Simon Roberty in.
Oh yes, thanks, Chair. I'm thinking that given the strength of feeling that we normally have about doing extensions on listed buildings, particularly in the green belt, why we should make an exception for this one? If this extension is going to be approved, it really does need to be in keeping with the listed building. And at the minute, the design doesn't do that to me. It just looks like an extension put on the back of a building, and I really don't see how that is acceptable on this particular one, when normally we would say no.
Okay. Simon?
Thank you, Chair. Just really to clarify, if you are to defer this, it will be deferring it for negotiation. I don't think, Alan may well correct me from a legal perspective, but my view is you're not committing yourself, and you should not be committing yourself to finding any particular element of it acceptable, because then you would be predetermining effectively your subsequent decision. I think the point is that you're flagging up issues where you have concerns, and that set of concerns, the same way as it did with the green application at the beginning of tonight's agenda, I think provides a framework for discussion, but you are very much still reserving your position to make whatever decision you consider appropriate on all elements of any revised application that might come back following the deferment. I hope that clarifies. And Chairman, I would just suggest that perhaps Alan gives a legal view, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Alan?
Yes, Chair. I mean, the important point is you're not, as Simon says, you're deferring it, but you're not giving any commitment that you will approve what is coming back at the next occasion. So those members who do have concerns about granting permission, if it's being deferred, it doesn't prevent them from, or any of the other members from, voting against whatever does come back. If you're still not satisfied with it after discussions have been held with the applicant, then you're perfectly at liberty to vote against, because you haven't committed the council to doing any particular course of action.
Councillor Harkness?
No, sorry, I'm fine.
All right. Is any other members got any comments at all?
Sorry, yes, please, Chair. It's only Councillor Gloucester again. I really struggle with this because I live in a property of this type, and I have done an extension of this type. And I think unless you've actually seen an extension like this go up, you've no idea how in keeping an extension can be. And I think the materials that are being used are sympathetic to the listed building. And I think if you actually look at the existing and proposed elevations on page 40, and then you go over the page to page 41, I think actually the new elevation looks far better than the one that's currently there with that odd window. And I totally get the roof lines are a little bit out, and I'm absolutely certain that they could actually be brought far more in keeping with the current roof lines. We know that a precedent has been set. There has been a 2-storey extension to the building at the side of the adjoining property. So I really don't understand why people feel that it can't be deferred for further consultation. I think the applicant has already expressed that he hasn't been able to have what he feels are appropriate conversations with the planning department, and then planning department is saying it's not suitable. How do you reach something that is suitable for planning if it can't be discussed? So I stand by my proposal to defer the application to try and come to some arrangement to allow somebody to live in a home that's not a relic and is suitable for modern day life. If you want to go up and look at the property, that's absolutely fine. I'm sure they would welcome that. But I think people need to just get a little bit more knowledge about this type of a property. It's really difficult. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Ibrahim.
No, it's Councillor Surjan.
Sorry, Councillor Surjan.
Thank you, Chair. I just want clarification, Graham. Did you say that the property next door has an extension? Because I can't quite see it on the pack. But I just want that clarified, please. Thank you.
I think that there was reference to an extension on the adjoining property. I'm quite certain Councillor Curley might be able himself to clarify that. But obviously the adjoining property is not in line at the back with the applicant's house itself. I'm not convinced that's an extension. I think that is the original building. Now, Councillor Curley might have actually been referring to another part of that building further round, but what you can see in the view, to my mind, that's not an extension on the adjoining property.
Yeah, my understanding, Councillor Curley, and he can nod his head if it is correct, mentioned that there was an extension around the other side of the building that had a sort of an unknown time when it was actually constructed.
That's correct, Chair. Mr. Dickman is correct in what he says. What you can see is not part of the extension. That's the original building, so you can't see it from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've still got Councillor Ibrahim indicating.
Yes, I do have something to ask. Councillor Curley did actually mention that there was some sort of exchange. So I just want to ask a question to the planning officer. I've had a look briefly on the council website about previous planning applications for Lower Tunstead. The application seems like it was in 1996. There's obviously not a lot of information. I haven't got time to look into that. Is it possible, if this application is deferred, could we get some information? Because it looks like it's probably a single story, not a double story, like a two-story application. So if it is deferred, could we get some further information about what type of extension was actually put in place to the neighbouring properties, please?
I'm sure we could, but unless anybody else has got anything into the debate about deferral, I'm going to move to the vote because it's been moved and seconded deferral. Has anybody else got any contributions they'd like to make? Okay, if we could move the vote. It's been moved and seconded that the application is deferred. Is there any comments from the legal officers?
Yes, Chair, yes. Can I just clarify? You are wanting it to be deferred for discussions on two particular issues.
Those two issues have come out in our debate today. That,
yes, and it was to do with the window arrangements and the roof alignment. So that's what you're being asked to vote for the deferral for discussions on those two matters.
Yes.
I think the extension on the adjoining property does need to be looked at as well, please, because I think that's really important on this application, to be fair.
That'd just be a matter of information in presentation, wouldn't it, at the next meeting? Yeah. Councillor Davis.
No, we're not putting it for deferment just for those two items or issues. It's up for deferment for really to look at the full application again and submit something different, slightly different. Or maybe, you know, a lot different, I don't know. Working with the planning department, I think that's what it's being deferred for. It could be single story, it could be double story.
Well, I agree with you, Councillor Davis. I think that if we're deferring it, in all fairness, is that obviously the debate has gone on, and like the application previously, the green, we've raised a number of issues that would be helpful to be looked at before it actually comes back. But I think, and I'll take legal advice again, if we defer it to see if an improved scheme can come forward, I think that might be a cover-all for all the elements that people have discussed. Would that be permissible?
Yes, Chairman. Obviously, the applicant will have heard the members' discussion and the issues of particular concern to particular members. But yes, if you defer it for a general further discussions, everybody having listened to the debate knows the issues that are of concern to members, so they've got that flexibility.
Thank you. Okay. If there's no further comments, I will put that to the vote. If we could go to the vote. So
councillors are being asked to vote in favour of deferral. Councillor Akhtar?
For.
Councillor Davis?
For.
Councillor Gloucester?
For.
Councillor Hartness?
For.
Councillor Hudson? Councillor Hudson? Councillor Ibrahim?
For.
Councillor Iqbal?
Against.
Councillor Jakes?
For.
Councillor Fithian?
For.
Councillor Serjan?
For.
And Councillor Dean.
For.
You have 9 votes in favour of deferral and 1 against, Chair.
Right. I mean, our committee happy that that is for both items, because there's technically there was 2 applications, one for the listed building status and one for the planning.
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed.
Oh, we agree. Oh, we agree to that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And the vote was, Sean?
Sorry, Chair, it was 9 in favour of deferral and 1 against. I don't know which way Councillor Hudson was voting.
The item obviously is deferred then. Thank you very much. If we can go on to the next item, which is the Stevenson Street Waterhead one, FEMIC Works. If I can ask the planning officers to present the case.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this application was considered by committee back in August of last year. It's essentially the same scheme, so it's a residential development of 12 apartments. The only difference in this particular instance is that the resolution to grant last time was subject to a Section 106 agreement, which covered a financial contribution towards off-site public open space. The applicant has subsequently submitted a viability appraisal which has been considered, which indicates that if that requirement is in place, the scheme would not be financially viable and therefore would not go ahead. Clearly, we have to have regard to that in the considerations, and it's for members obviously to agree or not that revision. So I'll just quickly go through the slides on it. As I say, that really is the only issue open. The approval, the principle, etc., has already been approved in the last application. So this is the site, just around the back of existing buildings, back onto Huddersfield Road. There's a banking at the back of the site that you'll see on the later shots.
I can't see the presentation.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Is it?
Graham, I think somebody has taken control, because what I can see, I don't know about other members, Chairman, but I can see effectively somebody else's desktop.
Yeah, someone
Councillor
else is sharing their screen.
Councillor Hudson's sharing his screen.
Yeah, I agree. I can only see everyone else's faces.
Yes, I think, Chairman, it must be Councillor Hudson sharing his screen because he's in the bottom right-hand corner as the icon.
I think whoever's the administrator can actually override that. I think it's possible to override it. Should be able
He's
to.
actually left the meeting.
There we are.
Has he left the meeting?
I think we're back, Graham.
Right. Can you see the presentation?
Well, no, we'll try to get it. It might come on now.
No.
No.
Still no.
Now
Yes.
we can. Yeah.
Yeah, Furneck works. Got the right one.
Bingo.
Yeah, bingo, right. Okay, so we move through the site, and this time you'll see what I'm describing. So obviously there's a site on the red edge, Huddersfield Road to the north of the site. You can see existing properties that back onto the site. This is the building itself, so it occupies the western chunk of the site, and then car parking provision provided on the right-hand side. This is the access, so from that particular view, it's to the left of the picture where the application site is. So this area beyond the back of the site, and you can see the banking that extends up right at the back end of the site where the former buildings have been cleared. And this is looking just to the right of the previous view. So this is a little development which is accessed from the same entrance off Huddersfield Road. This gives you that indication. So these, in the right-hand side, these are the properties on Huddersfield Road. So the rising levels as you go up, and then the building is set against the banking at the back of the site. Just giving you a view, just looking towards the banking, and then some elevational views of the building itself. But as I say, those issues were all considered by committee at the meeting back in August, and the resolution on that occasion was to grant. The only difference now is the viability appraisal and the removal of the requirement for the financial contribution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions of the officers?
Yes,
No.
please, Chair.
All right, Councillor Gloucester.
What was actually on the site previously, did you say?
It was an old derelict works that I fought for about 5 years to get demolished.
Ah, right, brilliant. Okay. Improvement then. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there any further questions at all? No. Okay. Has anybody got any observations on the application? Councillor Harkness?
Yeah, so obviously, as in August last year, happy with the proposals of the development there. I do have some concerns when developers come back and say, actually, we can't build this and try and get out of the 106 money. So I'm not really happy with that element of it. And I think that, you know, those that section 106 contribution should be paid.
Mr. Dickman?
Oh, the issue is quite clear that the applicant has demonstrated that if that was the case, then it would make the scheme financially unviable. We've assessed that information. The other thing I would point out is that since the original scheme, this actually is an affordable housing, so agreements with First Choice to assist with the development of this particular site. So there's some benefit there that comes from what would normally be contributions that would be required. I have to say, I was a little bit surprised at the initial application when the applicant, you know, agreed to that contribution. That given the site that it's in, the location and so forth, that it's not come as a surprise that there are financial viability issues associated with the development. As I say, the reality would be that if this agreement wasn't reached, the development may not take place, and we may remain with a vacant site. Obviously, we've again got to weigh up, as you know, we've not had to remind members so far during this meeting, but of course, as you're all aware, we don't have a 5-year housing land supply, and therefore the provision of new housing has to weigh heavily in the judgment that's made. Thank you, Chair.
No, normally I'd have sympathy with Councillor Harkness's comments. I think in this particular case, it's one of the most marginal sites I think that we have knocking around in Oldham, and in actual fact there's been 2 previous development proposals for the site in the last 6 or 7 years where the developers have walked away at the finish because they haven't been able to develop it. So I do feel in this particular case it is a genuine it's a genuine issue that it makes the site unviable if we actually keep the £50,000 there.
Okay, you both convinced me then.
Thanks very much. Is there any further comments at all? If not, I'll formally move approval.
I'll second that, Chair. Councillor Malik.
Thank you. Would you like to go to the vote, please? Or has anybody got any comments before we go to the vote? No? Oh, okay, we go to the vote, please.
Could I remind members that were not in the meeting for the full debate are not entitled to vote? Councillor Akhtar. Councillor Davis. Councillor Gloucester. Councillor Harkness. Councillor Ibrahim. Councillor Iqbal.
4.
Councillor Jakes.
4.
Councillor Malik.
4.
Councillor Fithian.
4.
Councillor Serjan. 4. And Councillor Dean.
4.
That was unanimously in favour.
Thank you very much indeed. If we then can proceed to the last item on the agenda, which is a report on appeals. Don't know whether anybody's got any comments on them. Okay, could I move we note them?
Noted, yeah.
Okay.
Noted.
Thank you very much indeed for your attendance, and I will close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.